I'm always impressed by this collection. It's just so amazing. He's so talented, and there's such a broad range of material in it, from the artwork to the poetry to writing, criticism, all sorts of things. So it's fascinating and overwhelming, and I went through it a few different ways, and finally I decided to focus quite a bit on the visual because it's more appealing to a general audience and will draw them in, and they may wish to learn more about him from that. So I felt I had to begin with Amaro because that's the book for which he won the Nobel Prize in Literature, as well as his body of work, but that was the main inspiration, I think, for the committee. So I thought I have to start with that, and he'd done these storyboard treatments of Amaro, even though it was an epic poem published as a text. He was also working on a film version of it, and there are these beautiful color drawings that he did in storyboard panel style, with his elegant handwriting beside them with the dialogue. And I thought that's a great way to start, and I also just like the yellow paper that he did them on. It's very kind of visually appealing. And the second case is all about the Nobel Prize. There's a copy of the actual text of the nomination. He was nominated by Professors Ted Chamberlain and Edward Baugh of Jamaica. So I thought it would be interesting for people to see exactly what the nomination said, because I personally had never seen one of those myself, so I thought it was interesting. Case 3 is from his musical play called Steel, which is set in Trinidad and Tobago, roughly around the time of the Second World War. And it has some complex storylines, but basically it tells about the birth of steel pan music, with a backdrop of the war and then some personal stories and a love story and that kind of thing. So there's some absolutely gorgeous watercolor paintings, just a few that he did for Steel, and I couldn't resist putting them in. There's also a nice poster from the 2005 Trinidad Theatre Workshop production, which is also in Case 3. So, Case 4 holds his personal notebooks, and he puts everything in there, like doodles and drawings and his finances and drafts of texts and notes to himself, and I just find them fascinating, and as well as just being some beautiful drawings and more of his gorgeous handwriting. I just like his handwriting so much, and I think many people will think the same thing. So, Case 5 is all about Teopolo's Hound, one of his books, which contrasts sort of the story of his own life against the West Indian painter Camille Pissarro, who he considers one of the early West Indian painters. And it's interesting because he moved to France and became part of the Neo-Impressionist movement and is quite well known. But I think he retained many of the qualities of his early days in the Caribbean. And you can kind of compare and contrast with Walcott's own work to some extent. So in his usual complex and fascinating style, he guides us through, and you feel like you're sort of traveling through these two periods in time with him. Case 6 contains all production photographs from plays, many of them in the United States. There's also one in Amsterdam. I believe that was for a branch of the Blue Nile. Derek Walcott's worked with some very well-known actors, often early in their careers. For example, Angela Bassett, which many people will have heard of. It's a very young Angela Bassett in his play Beef, No Chicken, it's called. And I believe it was the Yale Repertory Theatre production that these photographs are from. Also, for those Knots Landing and Dallas fans, there's Joan Van Ark. Interestingly, she appeared in some early work in her younger days as well. And also Frances McDormand, the Coen brothers. So her some of her earliest jobs were actually with the Trinidad Theatre Workshop in Trinidad. So people may not realize that, but I found all of that quite interesting myself. I didn't know this until I really started to look through the papers carefully. So, Case 7 is all about the Trinidad Theatre Workshop, which Derek Walcott founded in 1959 with the artistic director Albert Laveau, who I believe still may be the director now. But it's very interesting because it's all about sort of underdog struggle, small theater, underpaid actors, the usual story. It's quite fascinating. They've done very well, and there's some media print articles and things about Derek Walcott and about the Trinidad Theatre Workshop. There's a letter from Jonathan Silver, the then president of Boston University, congratulating them on their production of Dream on Monkey Mountain, I believe at Boston Playwrights Theatre, and all the accolades that they received. So very interesting. Case 8 is all about O Babylon, which is his play set in Jamaica. Again, complex storylines, but briefly, it's about a community of Rastafarians who are waiting for the visit of Haile Selassie to Jamaica in 1966. And at the same time, they're trying to avoid being evicted from their land by developers who want to put up a 5-star hotel. And then there's some personal stories, sort of a redemption story of a former criminal named Rufus Johnson who converts to Rastafarianism. He changes his name to Brother Aaron, and he leaves his life of crime and becomes a carver and artist and sculptor and joins the Rastafarian community. This is also a musical, and there are many just delightful drawings and paintings that go along with this, so Case 8 contains some of those.